Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Effects Maniac. This is Syed Mahmoud Amiri again, and it's been a long time since my last tutorial, actually 3 weeks ago, but I do apologize, been quite busy. Not actually busy, but I've been going through some stuff, and today I decided to do a tutorial for you people, and in this one I'll be showing you guys how to create this FIFA Ballon d'Or, the ball, and some details with that. So this is basically the thing that we're going to be creating today. So this is the one that we're going to do. We'll be using 3ds Max, and for these particles I'm going to be showing you guys how to do it with Tyflow, and then we're going to render it out with Vray. So here are some raw renders and some reference images that I've been collecting. So yeah, and this is the environment for the thing. So let's get started on this. So first off, we're going to go into 3ds Max. I am going to reset this, so don't save, yes, and then let's start modeling the ball. So I'm going to go into the extended primitives and create a Hdri and drag it out here. And if you don't want to see these selection brackets, just hit J and then you'll hide that one. And then I'm going to go into the modify panel, set it to icosphere, and then set the p-value to 0.37. so it kind of like it differs from different values, but like I just found out that 0.37 is the perfect number to get as close as you can to a soccer ball. So I'm just gonna move it up and then hit Z to zoom on that, and then let's just convert it to editable poly, select all the edges, and then hit split. And then I'm going to add a tessellate modifier. So go in here and hit T, tessellate, and then set it to faces. Maybe 2 levels or 3 levels based on what you need. So I'm going to set it to 3. And then I'm going to add another modifier, which is spherify. So it's going to make it like a sphere. And now I'm going to go into right click, convert to editable poly, so that we can extrude those edges. But the cool thing is you can see that we've created some 6-sided polygons and some 5-sided polygons, just like a soccer ball. So I'm gonna hit polygon and select all the polys, and then go into bevel, and you can see that they're extruding out. So you can increase them or decrease them as much as you want, but like I want to set it just this much only, and yeah, so hit OK, and then now it's pretty solid, right? So if I hit F4, pretty solid. Want to make it smooth, so I'm going to the modifier list and I add a turbo smooth, which is basically going to make it look like a soccer ball. So if you want to make I want to show you one more thing. If you want to make like a regular, like normal soccer ball, you want to basically convert this to an editable poly and select the 5-sided polygons, hitting Control, holding down Control, and selecting all these sides. So kind of like that. And make sure to not miss any of the sides. So we've selected all of them. So go down to the polygon ID, and I'm going to set it to a number like 4, and then hit Control I to invert the selection, and then set it to like 5 or 6 or any number. Just make sure you remember it later. Okay. So hit M for the materials, and then I'm going to add a multi-sub object material, which is basically here, multi-sub object. And I'll be using Vray, so I'm going to go here and set the renderer to Vray next. And I'm going to add a Vray material, so simple one. And I'm going to hold down Shift and drag it down. Make it black for the 5-sided polygons, and then the other one white. So double click on that and make it white. And then we had it number 4 and 6, right? So I'm gonna connect this to number 4 and connect this to number 6. And if I apply this to this one, you can see that we've got this like a regular soccer ball, right? But this is not the thing that we're gonna create. So we're just gonna be adding a global sort of material to this, like a gold material. So we're done with the modeling of the soccer ball. Now we're gonna just basically create these stone type materials. So I'm going to be using Tyflow for that, so I'll just create a placeholder for this first. So I'm going to go create a sphere from the top view, this much, and then I'm going to hit R to scale it down. like this much. And then hit F4, move this up so that it sits right on top of that. And then I'm going to slice it because I don't really need the bottom part, so I'm going to add a slice modifier. So slice and then remove bottom, and then right click, convert it to editable poly, and add a turbo smooth. So we have a lot of details to play with. And I'm going to scale this like this, like so it's kind of like squeezes it. So, and then I'll add a noise modifier to this. So make it small, make it fractal, like what, 20, and then increase the strength, maybe like 20 centimeters on each side. So we basically get kind of a noisy sort of surface to be able to. So we've basically created this noisy surface to be able to replicate some particles on top. So now is the Tyflow part. So if you don't have Tyflow, you can just go and download it. It's free. Just Google Tyflow and you'll be able to find it. And I've mentioned it in my previous tutorials too. So once you install Tyflow, you're just gonna drag one out here. And I'm going to go into the modify panel, open editor, and then just drag it here. So we want to populate some particles on top of the surface. So what I'm going to do is add a birth node and then add a position object, and then select go to pick and then pick this object. So you can see that if I move the timeline, you can see some particles are generating, but I don't want it to be generated over time. I just want it to be there. So I'm just going to set the frame to 0. So they're there. And then we have like 200 particles. I'm going to just set it to 2000. So now we have 2000 particles on top of the surface. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a shape operator. So I'm just going to hit tab here and then shape. And then I'll go into 3D, and the shape that I've found which looks which really fits is the chunks round. And then I'm going to go to display and set it to geometry. So now you can see that if I scale it up, if I set the scale to like what, 600, you can see that we have some chunks like the stones, as you can see here on that. Like, I don't know what it is, but it looks pretty similar. So, and then I'm gonna add some variation, maybe 60%, and then just to make it random, because we don't have a random value here, I'm just gonna add, because you can see that in the real Ballon d'Or image, you can see that some pretty weird sized chunks. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go back to 3ds Max and I'll add a scale operator again, and I'll put it afterwards, and then I can just scale it up or down. But then the cool thing is, if I set this to like 100, I can just set this proportion to off, and then I can scale it from the y-axis. You can see that, it just kind of like squeezes it in a very weird way, which we don't want. I mean, I just want it to be like 120, and then in the z-axis maybe 300. So you can just basically create like random sized pieces with this. So maybe 150 or 140 with this. So, and then I'm going to add some variation, maybe like 60% or even more, 70. And then I'll add a rotation also, because I want them to be rotated into different axes. So maybe I'll just scale them up a little bit more, maybe 650 or 60. Yeah, so that's basically it. And then you can increase the number of particles or decrease it. 4,000 is going to fill it up. But you get the idea, right? So maybe I'll set it to 3,000. Yeah. So now let's get to the lighting and rendering part of this. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this tutorial, I'll be using Vray next. So first off, I'll add 2 lights. So I'm going to go into lights and Vray. So Vray light, and I'm going to just drag one out here. And then I'll move it up and then rotate it so that's facing the direction of our scene. And then I'm going to set it to target it. So we have a target here. And then what I'm going to do is just go into the options and then set it to invisible, because we don't want to see it. And then I'll just hold down shift and drag a copy here. And then one more to the back side of this. So if I go to high quality, you can see that we got a light and everything. Now I want to create the materials for this. So I'll hit M to create the gold material, and I'll be using Vray. So I'll drag one out here, Vray material, and then I'll set the color to a very dark golden orangish sort of color. So I'll just go down here, maybe like that, and then I'll increase the reflection to almost pure white, and then I'll give it a bit of glossiness. So I'm just going to drag this material here. So if I render this out right now, I'll just go into very quick settings and then set it a quick sort of less and low quality render. So if I render this out right now, you can see that it's there, and then I'll go into the perspective, show save frame, so that we can see the proper view of the viewport, and then I'll render it out. You can see that it's reflecting, but there's no environment. The thing about gold and silver materials, the materials which are metal, is that they're reflecting the environment that they're in. So for that, we can use some HDRI images, which I have used in this example. So I'm going to go into the render setup, and then I'll go into Vray, and then here is the environment, and then I'll go into the reflection and refraction environment, click, and then I'll add a Vray HDRI. So I'll go down, Vray HDRI, and then hit M and drag it out here and make it an instance. Okay, and then double click and I'll locate my HDRI images. So if I go here, just for example, I have this image, right? Or I just go to my I'll go to my textures, and I have some environment images here, which this is the one that I've used. So I'm just gonna open it here and make sure to set it as a spherical environment, because it's 360-degree environment, so it's a spherical one. And then if I render this out right now, so if I click here, this was our last render, right? So I'm just gonna get a clone of this, so we have it, and then I'm gonna render again. So now you can see a lot of difference. Here is the normal one without any environment, and here's the one with the environment. So it's basically reflecting the environment. And the other thing is we cannot see the Tyflow particles, because inside Tyflow we need to set another operator, which is the mesh operator. So I'll add a mesh, and then now if I render this out, you can see that you can see the Tyflow particles too. So this is basically, we're getting close to our final render, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'll just hit M and adjust the materials a little bit. So I'll cancel this, cancel, close, hit M, and make the reflection a lot more, and then the color less, so maybe even darker. And for the stones, I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'll change the color to maybe like white or something, and then I'm gonna make it less glossy and or even a bit more brighter, and I'll select the Tyflow and apply this material to it and to the Tyflow. Alright, so now if I render this out, you can see that they are reflecting that environment, and it's looking not that bad. So, and there are a couple of things that we can do to even enhance it. So I'm just going to make it even more darker so that we get more reflection. Yeah, and let's get a proper render of this. So I'm going to adjust the gold material a little bit more, maybe, yeah, make it even darker. And I'll just hit Z on this, change the render settings to maybe full HD. I'm gonna go with 1920 by 1080 and get a proper render of this, so maybe from this angle, and then I'll zoom in a little bit, and then I'll increase the render settings. So I'll go into Vray quick settings and then increase the AA quality and the shading and the GI, the global illumination. So I'll just click render and see how it looks. So I'll just pause the video and we'll be back when it's done. So here's the render which is done. I think the ball is looking pretty cool and the reflection and everything, but the only problem is with these stones. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply the gold material to this one as well, so and see how it looks. So I'm going to select Tyflow and I'll add this material, and now let's see how it looks. So we'll let it render. I think now it looks pretty cool. So it looks kind of like it's the same material as the gold, which is supposedly it should be there, but I think we can just make a little bit of a change to it. So just cancel this. I'm gonna duplicate this material and I'll just make it a little bit more light and towards like white color, and apply this one to the Tyflow. So let's see here, and then if I click here, it's gonna follow the mouse. So yeah, it's looking good, but it's just a little bit too bright. So you just play around until you get the look that you're looking for, which is this one, not the reflection but the color. Make it dark. Let's see here. Still not getting the look quite as much, but yeah, let's see what we can do. So I'm gonna make it even more darker, so I'll just set it to like black. So now they don't have anything, no color, just the reflection. Now it's looking, I think, pretty good. Yeah, kind of close. Yeah, but then the other thing, if you don't want to make it too shiny, because there's a lot of specular going on here, so what I'm going to do is I'll just decrease the glossiness. So if I decrease the glossiness, it will be more like a glossy surface. So now if I render this, you can see that they're not as much shiny. They're just like some pieces of, some pieces of, I don't know what they are, but yeah, I think now it's looking a bit better. So you can just play around with the settings, like the color and the glossiness, to get the perfect result that you want. And I can give it a bit of a color, so I'm just going to cancel this, and maybe a little bit of a goldish color, something, a very slight tint of gold. So yeah, and then when we're done with the render, so this is our like final thing, so I'm just gonna get a good angle, and you can adjust the camera and zoom in and stuff. So let's get a proper render of this, and then we're gonna get it into After Effects for some compositing. So I'll just wait till it's done, and you can use any software. You can even use like Photoshop to basically do the compositing and do some color correction, or even you can use the window here. So if I go into exposure, I can just give it some color, make it dark, make it bright, or do whatever you want to do. But I feel like, in compositing softwares, you have a lot more control. So we're done with the render, so I'm just going to save this here as a final tutorial render, and then JPEG, and then save. And then I'm going to go into After Effects, which I've actually done previously. So I'm going to go a new project. So I'm just going to double click here, and now we're in this folder. So render tutorial, and then I'm just going to bring this into After Effects. So here's a raw render. So what I'm going to do is I'll add a curves adjustment and give it a bit of a contrast, and then I want to make it look like gold, right? So I'll just increase the red color a little bit, not so much, and then decrease the blue, and the green channel we can just give it a little bit of a curve, so maybe kind of like that. And to make it like look a bit shiny, so I'm just gonna add optical flares, or just a normal lens flare if you want, but I'm going to be using optical flares. So going to the options, clear all, and yeah, that's basically it. So I'll hit OK, and then I'll set this to add, and you can go into the distort menu and add a polar coordinates, set it to rectangular to polar, which is basically going to make it into a circle, and then I'll just scale it up and just as much as the ball is, and then I'm going to hit R, rotate it, move it up, maybe here, and I'll just adjust it. So basically like that. Alright, and then I'm going to add a curves again to give it some contrast, increase the red channel, or I can just go in here, change the color to sort of a orangish, not so bright, but kind of like that. And then I'm going to blur it out, so going to blur and sharpen, maybe Gaussian blur, and then increase the amount. And finally, I'm just going to add a glow on top of everything, so going to stylize and glow, increase, and maybe make it less, like 0.6. So this is basically it for the tutorial, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys learned something from it. And yeah, to add this symbol, I've just used this, like you can create an alpha channel for this and then add it to a plane, which I'm sure you guys can do so. But this was basically the tutorial, and I know it's been a long time since my last tutorial, like 3 weeks, and as I always say, I will try to be more consistent with these tutorials, but you know, just sometimes you get busy and stuff, but I will be more consistent. Let me know in the comments what questions or anything that you want to have, or any suggestions for the upcoming tutorials. What do you guys want to see next? Maybe some After Effects tutorials, some Maya tutorials, or 3ds Max tutorials. So do let me know in the comments, and make sure, if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure to do it. And as I always say, till the next tutorial, enjoy working.